Oh, modern religion, no matter how orthodox, no matter which faith you belong to, is so steeped in the occult that it's quite amazing that those who practice it do not see it. And even if they could, they probably wouldn't want to, because the subconscious programming for religion runs very deep. We'll start with Christianity. Now, Jesus Christ is a solar deity, with some elements of Jupiter thrown in for good measure. Christianity's holy day is Sunday, day of the sun. Christ is depicted upon the cross, many times with rays of light coming out from him, or depicted with the heart in the center. These are both Kabbalistic references, specifically to the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. In the center of the Kabbalistic Tree of Life is the Sephiroth of Tophareth, the Sephiroth of the sun. When we perform the Kabbalistic cross ritual, it is akin to making the sign of the cross in Catholicism, by touching the head, the navel, and then both shoulders. Well, in the center of that cross is your heart, and the heart corresponds with the sun. This is why Jesus is depicted upon the cross. He's depicted with the flaming heart. The heart is a flame just like the sun is a flame. The occult is very easy to decipher once you know your correspondences and symbolism. At the winter solstice, when the sun is at its lowest point in its trajectory, it seemingly disappears from the sky for 3 days. Primitive people have thought the sun had died, but after 3 days it's resurrected and comes back to life, just as Jesus did. After 3 days. When it was referred to the resurrection of the sun, they meant the sun in the sky. Now, as for the Jupiter aspect of Christianity, you just have to look at the name. Jesus, Zeus, the Greek name for Jupiter. Most everyone is familiar with the Jesus fish symbol. Well, the fish represents Pisces, and Pisces is ruled by Jupiter. And what are the characteristics of Pisces? Spirituality, compassion. Up until Christianity, the gods were very cruel, wrathful, and vengeful. Compassion being a strength was an entirely new concept. If you ever wonder why the New Testament of the Bible is all about love and forgiveness and compassion, and the Old Testament is about wrath, destroying entire cities and flooding the world, it's because they're both referring to two different gods. Jesus of the New Testament being the sun and Jupiter, and God the Father, the great I Am of the Old Testament, which is Saturn. That's why the holy day of Judaism is Saturday. The first 5 books of the Bible in the Old Testament are the sacred texts of Judaism, known as the Torah, also called the Law. Saturn rules over the law. Muslims also have a thing for Saturn. In Islam, they have a building known as the Kaaba, which is in the center of their most important mosque. It looks like a black cube. Both the color black and the shape of the cube correspond with Saturn. And Muslims believe this to be the house of Allah, the house of God. Many Muslims will make the pilgrimage to it each year. It's very important, as they are supposed to circumvent around it counterclockwise 7 times to complete their pilgrimage. So the followers of these modern religions are really Sun, Jupiter, and Saturn worshippers without even realizing it. But the leaders know these symbols and archetypes have been chosen purposefully. They're taking natural cycles and phenomena and building a religion around it. And because the cycles and phenomena are natural, they really resonate with people as being true. They're ingrained in our psyche and our being. The new gods are still the old gods, just in disguise.
You're an admirer of Erich Neumann and of Carl Jung. Yeah, and that's the Neumann connection is really interesting because I think he's a bloody genius. I really like The Great Mother is a great book and really a great warning, that book, and also The Origins and History of Consciousness is
one of my most influential books. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah. I read an essay that you wrote. I don't remember when it was.
A lecture I gave on Neumann at the NYU. Yes.
Yes, it's always been staggering to me that that book hasn't had the impact that it should have had. I mean, Jung himself, in the preface to that book, wrote that that was the book that he wished that he would have written. It's very much associated with Jung's symbols of transformation, and it was a major influence on my book Maps of Meaning, which was an attempt to outline the universal archetypes that are portrayed in the kind of religious structures that you put forward. But the thing that I really see happening, and you can tell me what you think about this, in Neumann's book, consciousness, which is masculine, symbolically masculine for a variety of reasons, is viewed as rising up against the countervailing force of tragedy from an underlying feminine, symbolically feminine unconsciousness, right? And it's something that can always be pulled back into that unconsciousness. That would be the microcosm of that would be the Freudian Oedipal mother familial dynamic, where the mother is so over protective and all-encompassing that she interferes with the development of the competence not only of her sons but also of her daughters, of her children in general. And it seems to me that that's the dynamic that's being played out in our society right now, is that there's this, and it's related in some way that I don't understand, to this insistence that all forms of masculine authority are nothing but tyrannical power. So the symbolic representation is tyrannical father with no appreciation for the benevolent father, and benevolent mother with no appreciation whatsoever for the tyrannical mother, right? And that's that. And because I thought of ideologies as fragmentary mythologies. That's where they get their archetypal and psychological power, right? And so in a balanced representation, you have the terrible mother and the great mother, as Neumann laid out so nicely. And you have the terrible father and the great father. So that's the fact that culture mangles you half to death while it's also promoting you and developing you. You have to see that as balanced. And then you have the heroic and adversarial individual. But in the postmodern world, and this seems to be something that's increasingly seeping out into the culture at large, you have nothing but the tyrannical father, nothing but the destructive force of masculine consciousness, and nothing but the benevolent great mother. And it's an appalling ideology, and it seems to me that it's sucking the vitality, which is exactly what you would expect symbolically. It's sucking the vitality out of our culture. You see that with the increasing demolition of young men, and not only young men, in terms of their academic performance, which, like, they're falling way behind in elementary school, way behind in junior high, and bailing out of the universities like mad.
Now, here's an interesting thing about planetary placements in opposite signs. If someone has a lot of planets in a particular sign, all that energy overload tends to leak out into the opposite sign, such as Genghis Khan, who was born with 5 planets in Libra, yet went on to conquer a large part of Asia and Europe as an Aries, a warlord. It's a rather interesting phenomenon, so if you have a lot of planets in a particular sign, look to the opposite sign to see if you aren't exhibiting qualities of that sign. It's like they become so much of a particular sign that they end up becoming the opposite sign. Like a martial artist who gets so good that they don't want to fight anymore. They'd rather work things out peacefully because they know they destroy the other person. Too much warrior ends up becoming the diplomat. The dark side of Libra could be superficial, hypocritical, judging without realizing that they're guilty of the same thing, being overly obsessed with justice and equality, as we see in today's social justice warriors, wanting to force justice and equality into every part of your life, that they're willing to use force in order to do it. The opposite sign, Aries. That's what communism is. The equality of Libra forced onto everything by the force of Aries. Take a look at any communist regime. They'll always promise equality for the people, yet be extremely militant. And the military is ruled by Aries. If you won't be equal on your own, we're going to force you to be equal. Well, hold up. There's 10 other signs besides Aries and Libra. Not everything in life is equal. Not everything in life is fair. Some things need to be, such as contracts. If a contract isn't balanced, if it isn't fair, no one's going to enter into it. There has to be advantages to both sides. Contracts are negotiated, diplomacy. The dark side of Libra doesn't do that. It wants to make everything symmetrical, everything balanced, everything equal, without the negotiation, without the diplomacy.
Question of terms, I think. Is it wokeness? Is it diversity? Is it DEI? What exactly are we talking about? I think it's important because one thing that happens again and again is you're asked, while trying to talk about this abstract thing that seems to be sort of pervasive, you're asked, well, is it even real? If you can't define it, does this thing even exist? It seems like, you've made it up. It is a mountain that you've made out of a molehill. There's nothing going on here.
Well, there's something very slippery about all the words. I think the late 80s, early 90s one was multiculturalism, which has probably gone a little bit out of fashion. It's more wokeness. Diversity feels like it's been a quasi-permanent word for 30 years, so it's probably not the worst one to focus on. But yes, there is something about the seeming slipperiness of it that's an important feature. And in some ways, one of the things that I think has held up extremely well is the title of the book, The Diversity Myth. And it's an ambiguous title, and you can think of it in one of two ways. If you put the stress on the word diversity, then there's this sort of natural critique that follows where you don't have genuine diversity on a college campus if you have a group of people who look different but think alike. That diversity, intellectual diversity should mean more than hiring the extras from the space cantina scene in Star Wars or something like this. And this is sort of, and then this was sort of the idea, people talk about diversity all the time, but on a lot of important dimensions, they don't really have it. It's sort of a powerful internal critique. But then the second meaning puts the stress on the word myth. And under this meaning, diversity is it's a poorly defined word. It's something we tell stories about. It's a kind of shibboleth. It's a false god that we're worshiping. And then the kind of questions that leads to is, and maybe it's a diversion from things that are more.
Hi, Jonathan. My question is about ways in which principalities manifest in our physical world. What differences are there between people embodying principality, willing or unwillingly, e.g. king embodying angel or the kingdom or demon of lust possessing a person, and principalities taking particular physical or rather visible form, e.g. Archangel Gabriel visiting Mary, and how incarnation of Christ fits in all of this? Thank you. So think about it this way. Think about it like everything that exists is both an agent and a body. It's both something that is acting on the world and something which is being acted upon and is a body for other things, right? And so that's true of everything in the world. And especially intelligent, obviously, especially intelligent agents. So you are the body of your family, a part of the body of your family. You are a body for your state. You're a body for your Facebook group, or your body for whatever it is that you engage in that has a higher identity than you. You're a body for certain causes. You're a body for certain political ideologies. You're a body for your city's recycling program, like whatever it is that you act in, and you can be a body for that. Now, you're also a principle, for sure. You're a principle to a certain extent for things that are under your power, you could say. And so that's the way it works. And so, the difference between, let's say, so there are more direct and indirect ways to act or to manifest. So sometimes things, let's think about it this way. Or let me think about it this. Let me help you think about it this way. So let's say I'm the father of my family, and so in my house, my house, mostly my wife and I. Let's say my wife and I, our house functions as an extension of our relationship. And therefore, there are certain implicit rules and certain implicit ways of being that have to be maintained in the house for that to continue to be true. So my kids, when at this point now, without me saying, they know how to behave. They know what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. They know how to engage with each other. They know what their responsibilities are. And then once in a while, let's say it's time to do the dishes, and my child doesn't do the dishes. And so I have to go knock on their door and say, come do the dishes. And so one is a more direct implication of the principle, where there's a direct communication which comes down and then informs you of what you need to do. And the other one is more indirect. Your will kind of imbibes the body of the thing that you're the head of, and then that just kind of naturally exists. So, you know, yeah, hope that helps.
It's much worse than you think, a whistleblower told me who works for all the social media companies. There's a complex where cancellations and pressure campaigns are well organized by outside groups. It's a total conflict waged in every school, business, and platform. Is it a conspiracy? Is it a culture? Yes. Conspiracy means to breathe together. It's cancel culture with an inorganic overlay that we call the censorship industrial complex. This is here. It has arrived. It's in place. Our job now is simply to dismantle and defund it.